Hey, how we doing, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Bulls Roundtable. Oh, did we lose Jamal? Well, we are here with Jamal from Bulls Central. I think we might have lost him for a little bit here, but we're going to be talking about Bryson Graham, the hire of Bryson Graham today, and maybe some future hires here, and the lottery prediction. So as soon as we get Jamal back, I guess we'll be good to go. But Mike, how you guys feeling, Mike and Joe?
Good. How you doing, brother? Long week.
Absolutely.
Super excited
Absolutely.
about what the Bulls are doing. Super excited.
Yes.
Yeah, good. I'm even keeled. I very much like the hire of Bryson Graham. I'm trying not to get excited because I feel like I'm having flashbacks to AK, just not in terms of anything about them being similar. Just when AK and Mark Eversley were hired, I was so excited. I was like, here's a fresh start. Everything feels great. And obviously, we'll talk later, but we know how that ended up going. So I'm cautiously optimistic. Everything about the hire of Bryson Graham feels different. So I'm optimistic.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
This is weird. It's saying that Jamal, he said he's trying to come back in, but it's not letting him. What the hell, man? What a start. What a start to the episode. Hold on. Let me
I
see.
hope that's not a bad omen for Bryson Graham, man. Damn.
Yeah, what is that, man? Let me see. Maybe try to leave again. Well, regardless, I'm gonna try to get him back, but I mean, guess we could just start off saying how we felt about it until he comes back in. So, Mike, you want to start off?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So right off the bat, the first reason I think I said on Twitter, I always put on here just Zen Master Mike because I say follow me on Twitter. That's where I'm putting out most of my Bulls thoughts in real time when I get them, and then obviously once I have time to compose them, I'll put them up on Bulls Roundtable. But I like the
Absolutely.
hire because he's 39 years old. So obviously it's somebody who's fresh. They're going to bring a lot of good ideas. They're going to look at things in a different way than the previous regime. And then the other thing I like is Bryson Graham's did a little bit of everything. I saw some people try to downplay the fact that he was an intern and did different roles, but that stuff matters when you're going to be in charge of a large group of people who are all doing very small roles that add up to make sort of the sum sort of greater than the whole there. So I like everything Bryson Graham did in terms of coming from New Orleans, working his way up. I think
Yep.
David Griffin was a very smart and tenured person to work under and learn how the league works. I saw a lot of people try to slam his connection to David Griffin for not liking David Griffin's moves, and that's
Yeah.
looking at things a little too granularly, a little too black and white. This front office stuff isn't like players; it's more big picture. So I just like the fact that Bryson Graham worked so closely with David Griffin because we know he has relationships around the league that are going to help him. And honestly, I think that was maybe a weak spot for Karnisovas. I know he was respected league wide, regardless of what fans think, but I'm not sure that Arturas Karnisovas necessarily had the kind of relationships around the league that would necessarily make the Bulls great trade partners, which I think reflected
Great.
itself in their inactivity over the years. So I like everything about the hire of Graham just because it feels so different, to be honest.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love
Absolutely.
that final point. There 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 does seem to be a fraternity amongst these guys that are general managers, and many of them were either role players or they washed out in college. And so I really appreciate the journey that Graham has taken. And when you look at sort of like Brad Stevens, right? Brad Stevens, I think he was selling medical devices or something like that. And then he was
Mhm.
like, I hate this. I want to go back. And he started in the video room and then worked his way up, coached at Butler, and Ainge realized how talented of a coach he was and snagged him from Butler and then came to Boston. And now he's the executive in Boston. And I personally think that these guys that play college ball and then find their way into some dark room where they're having to watch video of obscure talent, the top 200 prospects in a given draft, and then they're having to work their way up, and they do that year over year over year. Uh,
Yeah.
that kind of iteration is super helpful in developing a skill set that allows you to draft well. And what we saw is that yes, he wasn't in Boston, he wasn't in Miami or the Spurs or the Cavs, some of these other guys we looked at. But he did a really good job drafting good talent, and he bloomed where he planted, right? And so to
Absolutely.
me, I don't really care that the Bulls have the 9th and the 15th pick in all likelihood. I want them to nail the picks that they are given, and I want them to be responsible with the resources that they're given. I don't want, because if you look at the OKC starting lineup, I think there's 2 second rounders and an undrafted free agent in the starting lineup. Chet Holmgren is the 2nd overall pick. That's their pick. And SGA wasn't even selected by them. So when you look at these teams, it's always going to be an assortment of players that you scouted 5 years ago. And so I think that he's going to identify players that are in his mold, as we talked about in the last show. And I think that he's going to look for grinders, and that's what he did. Jones is a grinder.
Absolutely.
Daniels is a grinder. Nikhil Walker-Alexander, grinder.
Yes.
Right? These are guys that their talent is not what necessarily popped for them right away. So to me, maybe you get a grinder with the 9th and the 15th pick, but these are players that maybe they're more Kirk Heinrich than they are Derrick Rose, but that's okay right now.
And I like that you brought up that OKC has Chet, who's, a elite top draft pick. They have SGA, a guy they traded for, and then guys like AJ Mitchell, who came out of nowhere and are scoring a lot and doing great stuff as the 38th overall pick. So the reason I love that you brought that up, Joe, is because there's multiple ways to skin a cat, right? There's multiple ways to go about building a great team. And the thing that I love about Bryson Graham is he mentioned, hey, you might want to grab some extra draft picks. He's open to evaluating the roster, seeing if he needs to make moves there. He's acknowledging that there are multiple avenues to build a great team, not just one way. And the Bulls are definitely going to need multiple avenues to get back on track.
Absolutely. So, okay. All right, guys. Well, we got the man of the hour here now. I don't know what is up with StreamYard, because I know when I was on Bulls Without Borders with Jamal, it was the same thing with StreamYard. I think they're trying to take Jamal out of here. But we got the man himself, Jamaal Aflatooni from Bulls Central. Jamal, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, guys. Appreciate sorry for the technical difficulties. I don't know what it is with StreamYard. I always have, no issues with Zoom or anything like that. But whenever I get on this one, and what was weird is it was actually fine until Mike joined, and I don't know, kind of.
Oh, it was Mike.
I'm gonna blame Mike for that one. He's already swindled me a couple times in fantasy for some trades. So
I was literally going to say, I've seen Jamal before. We haven't met in person, but it's actually awesome talking to Jamal about the Bulls and not bothering him about some trades in our fantasy basketball league. And the great thing about it, I bothered this guy so many times about trades in fantasy basketball without realizing. I'm like, wait, you're Bulls Central, Jamal? I'm like, oh my God. The wave of embarrassment when I realized who you were. I was like, man, so you knew some of these traits I was offering were dog water. You knew I was trying to
yeah, for sure. I was like, nice try, Mike, but
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Jamal. We really appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it, man. No, I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. So, Jamal, obviously, you want to just go ahead and introduce yourself. Everybody knows Bulls Central, but just in case, anybody's watching this who's never heard, kind of tell us about yourself, like what got you into the game and like your humble beginnings and everything, man.
Yeah, no, man. So yeah, Jamal, I do Bulls Central. I also have a NBA channel, but I just haven't been keeping up with it as much as I'd like. Just haven't found the time. It's called M1 Hoops. But no, man, I've always been a pretty big diehard Chicago Bulls fan, and during the pandemic, we were afforded a lot of extra time. And my wife said, you should maybe start a YouTube channel where you talk about the Bulls. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. No, random, people aren't just going to want to hear from some random guy talk about the Bulls. And then we kind of kept getting more bored, and there wasn't really anything to do. And I was like, all right, you know what? I'll give this a shot, just kind of see where it goes. And evidently people like listening to, just a random person talk about Chicago Bulls. And I was telling you guys, before we went live, I always kind of view it in the sense like, hey, I'm just a fan, I don't do this for a living. I'm not, a sports writer. I didn't go to school for journalism or anything like that. I just like talking Bulls basketball, and that's really all there is to it. So yeah, ever since then, I think I shared with you guys. I started around the time Patrick Williams got drafted. I think it was a couple days before the draft. I think that's when I did my first video on YouTube, and I've just been kind of at it ever since.
Absolutely, man. Well, I mean, that kind of just sounds like like just the whole beginnings and everything. It kind of reminds us of, Bryson Graham. Like you hear him talk about how he started, well, I mean, literally as an intern, taking out the boxes, man, and becoming a video scout, a video guy, and then working his way up to GM, to director of personnel. So which is always cool. Like we see, like you're not afraid to get it out the mud yourself, Jamal.
Yeah, man. It's funny. Bryson Graham, I know we talked a little about this offline too. It's like he wasn't like my first choice, but hearing him in that press conference, just the way that he carried himself, being so sharp, being very open and honest about what he wants to do with his team, how he kind of came up to be who he is, felt very relatable. And I feel like that's hard to do. I feel like a lot of executives, when you hear from them, you just can't really relate to them. But for him, I just felt like, man, like I could be like a buddy, like I could be friends with this guy. You know what I mean? I could go get a drink with him. And I like that aspect. So right away, he won me over in that sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he was on the show By the Horns with KC. And Cam, I think. And he said, I was gonna wear my 11s, I was gonna wear my Jordan 11s, but I didn't want people to think that I was too much, that I was laying it on too thick. But I thought that even the suit choice was a nice touch. I think that it's really fascinating to have someone that has a little bit of personality. Because quite honestly, since Paxson, because I think Paxson used to do a lot of radio, and he was open to being on the ESPN 1000 and the Score and all that. But when Gar Forman got in, he was not very likable, and he was not consistently on the radio show. And then when AK and Mark, I don't know, Mark probably rarely did anything.
You didn't hear from him much.
No, he didn't really speak much. Yeah.
And I know that Billy used to go on one of the radio shows. I think he was like Mullion Hall or something like that. But to me, I think what points to Jamal is he just seems very accessible. He mentioned in one of his radio spots, he's like, hey, if you see me out, don't be afraid to talk to me. I know you guys love the Bulls. Like I'm here to talk about the sport. So I think that accessibility and probably a little bit of the youth and his understanding of, the need to have connection with our sports leaders in town.
Sure.
I think that's going to really serve us well.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think it'll go well when you talk about building out the staff, just because, again, I myself kind of got tired of talking about Peter Patton, so I'm not going to rehash that whole saga because I really legitimately don't want to. But when you think about, again, what kind of happened there, it's AK's way or the highway was something I was hearing a lot. Or, if you don't do AK's way, you're out of here. And if someone's not doing a good job, obviously, you get rid of them. You do what you got to do. But getting rid of someone for not seeing your vision or for having a different way to do things, obviously not always the best idea. And we don't know until we see him in the job. But from this introductory press conference, Bryson Graham doesn't seem like the type of guy who's kind of going to have a power trip or anything like that in terms of being a top exec.
Yes.
He seems grateful for the role, ready to go to work, and then we'll see how it goes from here. But so far, he's passing with flying colors, I would say, just from that presser.
And you hear in corporate America a lot the saying, being the smartest guy in the room. And I love that quote that he said. If I forgot directionally, he said, if I'm the smartest guy in the room, we're going to fail, which means that he understands the assignment. And when you talk about building out a front office, it's not going to be him and a bunch of, paper tigers. I think it sounds like he's really interested. What are your thoughts on sort of building out a modern offense, or excuse me, a modern front office, Jamal?
Well, let me what you were saying before. Let me start. You have the ego aspect of it, right? Because I think it's easy to get a massive ego when you're an executive of a really big sports franchise, right? And so you can tell that that's not really there with him because of the things he said, like that about I'm not going to be the smartest guy in the room. Having that self-awareness and that humility, I think is so important in any front office. Like, again, we have to see the results. Like he hasn't done anything yet, but even just being able to be able to communicate with the press effectively, that is not something AK could do. You know what I mean? Like, and if AK was successful at his job, whatever. You can communicate with the press however you were, but he wasn't, right? So it kind of just made things worse. So he has that. He doesn't have the ego, which is huge. As far as like building out the front office, yeah, I have Will on my
Did we lose him?
That appears that's twice now. I think he was gonna talk about how he had Will on the show. But I can't speak for him. I don't know what he's getting ready to say after that. What's going on today, man?
But I mean, just to sort of close out the thought, I think that it's going to be interesting to see the Bulls have a modern front office. I mean, it's my understanding when Theo got here, the Cubs were very mom and popish, right? When Kevin Warren got to the Bears, the Bears were very mom and popish. And I think what's happened with the Reinsdorfs is that they are experiencing regression in both of their major franchises because they have not put in the work, to have a modern front office. And so I'm excited to see them, have a GM and an AGM and a head of strategy and a head of analytics and, a head of player development. And, you have all of these verticals that now report up to Bryson. And I suspect that is going to be very helpful. And the cool part is because he's done every job, he can call somebody out on something that doesn't feel right. But he also can, he mentioned on a couple different shows, he's like, hey, like he's going to want to hear an idea that maybe it doesn't seem natural, it doesn't necessarily seem like the obvious idea. So I think that he's going to really, really pull on a lot of different strings, a lot of levers to be successful. And really, ultimately, what that allows you to do is win on the margins, right? So, like, again, OKC has 2 second-rounders and an undrafted free agent in their starting lineup, right? So, like, it doesn't have to just be about the 2 lottery picks, right? The 2 lottery picks that you want to build around. It's going to be about the plays, on the moves on the margins.
And it's kind of it's par for the course that I would bring this up, but he didn't say this directly, but I'm excited at the prospect of the Bulls having an analytics department. It's something that Joe kind of touched on with talking about Theo coming to the Cubs. Someone who used to work for the organization, Steve Weinman, he was with the Bulls for 13 years. I had the chance to sort of talk to him a little bit over the time, some years ago. And he was great, but they didn't really have an analytics staff. He was kind of their analytics guy. And I believe they had some people who focused on that. And then you go around the league and I hear you have analytics departments where you have upwards of 30 plus people just focusing on that. So I think it's something where, again, you talk about the Bulls stepping up and being modern front office. I'm very excited to see if they attack the analytics department. I know a lot of fans will kind of resist this, but because they complain about the lack of the mid-range, focusing too much on threes. But Billy Donovan sort of having the Bulls dramatically have that shift was him trying to get them to sort of line up with the rest of the NBA in terms of how other teams are playing. Now, whether or not that's the correct thing, that is what the Bulls are trying to do there in terms of being more modern. So I think now you're seeing Michael Reinsdorf. I won't give him too big of a pat on the back yet, but he's trying to do the same thing with the front office, trying to go modern, young in terms of the VP, hopefully young in terms of the GM as well. And we'll see how the rest of these hires go. But I think as far as being modern, the Bulls are at a place where now they're sort of finally like the rest of the league in the best way possible.
We suspect that that's the direction that they're going. Yeah. I mean, and Dorsey, I see your comment. I actually love that exchange because it was telling that Mike was like, hey, this is you're going to choose the coach. This is going to be your guy. This is going to be, an effort that you make. Now, I also think that that's sort of the way the Risers have always led in terms of ownership, is allowing the front office team. But what he also was telling Bryson indirectly was like, you don't have to be deferential here. Everything doesn't have to be collaborative. Some decisions are yours, and that's okay. And I trust you. It was a little bit like, hey, I trust you to make that decision.
Yeah, and I won't speak for Jerry because I know how people, feel. Obviously, Jerry Reinsdorf, you can write a book. There have been multiple books written. But as far as Michael Reinsdorf, again, a person I've been a little bit close to, had the chance to at least interact with in a setting. I think, again, he genuinely does want the team to do well, cares about what the fans think and how they feel about the team, almost to the point where I think it's detrimental sometimes, but that can be a good thing. He really is passionate about caring about what he hears directly from season ticket holders. And I don't mean that just in terms of a bottom line joke. Like, he cares what they want from the team in terms of, are you comfortable with rebuilding? You know, should we be spending? And I want to give Michael Reinsdorf specifically credit. I was going to say the Reinsdorf, but I don't want people to come at me with pitchforks. So I'll just say I want to give Michael Reinsdorf some credit. He's the anti-Jerry Jones, I always like to say to my dad, in terms of he will be hands off, like Joe said. That's what I love. The AK hire would have been a home run if, as Jamal was kind of alluding to, AK did a great job, because Michael Reinsdorf is going to give you the Bulls and he's going to let you make basketball decisions that you think are correct. And that means letting AK run wild and be in charge and do whatever he wants. And that turned out to be a terrible decision. But you live and learn. But the good thing about that, Bryson Graham is in charge. He's going to get treated just like AK. He can run wild. He can hire who he wants. He can fire who he wants. And if you got the right guy, Michael Reinsdorf is a hero all of a sudden, because, again, now you're making the right move. So I think Michael deserves some credit because, again, we all, and I won't say we all, but myself and a lot of my friends thought that AK was a great hire at the time. And you don't know until a guy starts in that role.
Yeah,
giving them control is all you can kind of ask for.
One of the things that's been interesting in Chicago sports, and again, I know I'm older than you guys, so here's the Uncle Joe story. Like, if you look at the evolution of the ownership in the sports, the Ricketts were sort of, they were really surprising because they all of a sudden it felt like that they like cared, right? And then we got Theo, and it seemed like I was like, wow, they care. And then Theo's like, some of the stuff is like, what y'all doing over here, right? You know, because he was coming from Boston, and then the Cubs won, and the Blackhawks won. I mean, I think when the father died, or now the grandfather, when he died and Rocky took over, the Blackhawks got really good. They went out and got Bowman, and they made some really good decisions, and they had that little run in the early 2010s, and then something happened with George, and I don't know what it was, but around the time that he finally brought in Poles, and I think he brought in Warren, like George was like, you know, like, we need to get this back on track. And he was a little different in his tone. And I sensed that in Michael Reinsdorf in that apology, because the experience that we had with the Bears last year, it was so exhilarating, right? Like, I mean, we hadn't had a Chicago Bears experience like that since 2000 and really probably 2006. Because I think that Jay Cutler run, it just wasn't it was fun, but it wasn't great. I mean, they made it and they lost to Rodgers in the championship. So it almost feels like there's a little bit of like social pressure on the Bulls from other owners in the city to like, hey, y'all probably need to, like, you know, the Bulls and the White Sox need to get their stuff together. And I wonder even if there's some envy or jealousy, because, like, I mean, think about how we were feeling, bro. Like, think about everybody was following the Bulls and the Bears, you know, in that run last year, and it was like nothing we had experienced in a long time. And I hope that sort of resonated with Michael, and I was really appreciative of the apology.
Absolutely. Well, welcome back, Jamal.
Hear me okay?
Yeah, for now we
Sorry,
can.
man. I was like in deep like conversation talking about when I had Will Gottlieb on my show, and then all of a sudden, like, you guys like, hey, where do you go? And I can hear you guys, but you can't hear me. It's bizarre.
Anyway. Yeah, that's bizarre. So what were you saying? Like, when you had Will, like, were you guys talking about like just a few?
I mean, I think Joe, you'd asked me the question around front office, how you go about building out a front office. I mean, to be honest, like, I don't really know the ins and outs of how you build a front office in the NBA, right? My knowledge of like all of the different departments that exist to be able to do that is very limited. And so all I know is just based on the fact that, you know, you hear the Bulls front office, they've always been a little bit more lean than some of the other front offices around the league. So my hope is that what Michael's saying to Bryson, and that you're going to have free reign. There's not going to be any shortage of resources. Money is not an object, if you will. If that's truly the case, man, do what you need to do. Do what OKC does. Like build out the front office properly. Make sure you're getting the best and brightest minds in there to really be able to turn this thing around. Because then it's not really, you know, oh, is Bryson the right guy for the job? It's not about that. It's a collective, collaborative effort that they're trying to put together. So that's what I was saying before I got.
What did you think about the interaction between Michael and Bryson during the press conference?
You mean their interactions with each other?
Well, there's two. I'll expand on the question a little bit. I thought that Michael's apology was really very appropriate, and I thought it was earnest. And then I thought that there were some exchanges between the two of them. In particular, Michael and I were talking about when Michael Reinsdorf told Bryson, like, "Hey, you're picking the coach." So I thought that there was some really interesting dynamics that felt new and fresh and healthy.
It definitely. I mean, the fact that he interjected and said, "No, you're going to be picking the coach," to me spoke a lot. And the reason I say that is because I've always sort of been under this impression that, like, yeah, they hire a front office, but are they really the ones that are pulling the strings? And I don't know that, right? It's just, you know, you just, the things that they do, the things that past front offices have done, as far as making sure that they're staying under the tax, right? Kind of cutting corners here and there. It just seems like they're almost just doing what the ownership group is wanting them to do. So the fact that he was saying, no, this is you're picking the coach. I love that. Also, when it came to his apology, I thought that was great. I did not expect it, right? Because I think there's been very little accountability on the part of ownership, even throughout this process when, you know, things were not going well. I mean, one of the things that really bothered me about AK was that he rarely took responsibility. Like, he got always defensive whenever he was in any type of press conference. They were asking questions about, you know, what exactly is the plan here? He would just get defensive. Like, there was never a point. I think there was only one press conference where he said, you know, it's on me. That was when he's like, we're going to, you know, take a look at everything. Change needs to happen. That was really the only time. Outside of that, there was just very little accountability across the board. You didn't hear from Michael Reinsdorf at all. And whenever you did hear from AK, there was always just excuses, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's interesting now when you think about it, sort of like where we can go. There's so many possibilities. Have you sort of? He said that he hadn't looked at his coaching list in earnest, but I think, I don't know if Will was on the show. I don't know that I believe that fully, as much as I would say I'm sure that he's got a list, right? But I'm sure he's got to vet the list, is really what he's saying. What are your thoughts on some of the potential coaching hires that he could make? You got Sweeney. Well, you got Sweeney. You've got Tibbs is interested. He mentioned that it could be someone we don't even know, that we might not like. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, that I thought that was the only, I wouldn't say it was eyebrow raising type comment, but that was the only comment I was surprised by when from his press conference was like, oh, you haven't even like thought about coaches that you would be considering? I'm sure he's thought about some, right? He just didn't want to reveal it in that type of setting, because you'd have to, right? Anytime you're planning to take over a job, even if it's something you're interviewing for, you already have to be considering, okay, well, who could be the next potential head coach? As far as like some of the guys, you know, I mean, I know a lot of people are kind of going back to Tibbs. I like Tibbs, always liked Tibbs. I loved when he was with the Bulls in that era. I just don't think that's the right coach that you need for this team right now. I'd be surprised, to be honest, if they move forward. Just based on the fact that they went with a young hire, Bryson Graham being the hire, also, you know, relatively new as far as this role, right? Like, he's never been in a number one type role.
Right.
My assumption is he's probably going to go with a young coach, probably a first-time head coach, not someone that's inexperienced, probably someone that's been an assistant coach for quite some time. That's my assumption anyway. But we don't know. I think he said, I want someone that's good coaching on both sides of the ball, right? Like that was the only thing he really like reiterated on, was like, they need to be good on both ends of the floor, right? They can't just be an offensive-minded coach or a defensive-minded coach. They need to be both. Whether that means it's a brand new coach or someone with championship level experience, you know, who knows? But I think he's probably going to go with a newer first-time head coach.
Absolutely.
And that's another reason I'm pretty excited about it, is I trust Graham to hire a pretty good head coach, or at least someone who'll think outside the box and be young like himself because of his connections. Jamal kind of mentioned, not knowing the finer in and outs of how you build a front office. And I wouldn't say I do either, but when I think of it, I kind of think of it like Ocean's 11 or any heist movie. You need a numbers guy, you need a salary cap guy, you need a guy who's just friends with the agents, you need a guy who's just friends with the players. You need someone to specialize in everything. A big reason the Bulls were going after Dave Lewin, I believe, so hard, the assistant GM in Boston, because I believe he is pretty good when it comes to salary cap and playing around with the numbers. But I just think Graham, because he's had experience in so many roles, as a former college player himself, I think he has enough connections against various levels where the Bulls will sort of be covered in all aspects. In terms of head coaching candidates, everyone kind of regurgitates the same names, Tom Thibodeau, stuff like that. I like to throw out random old coaches like Jeff Van Gundy, because I do think it would be awesome if he got back into being a head coach. But the guy who's at the top of my list right now, I don't even know if he's going to be considered for head coaching roles, but Tony Dobbins is an assistant coach for the Boston Celtics. He was like a former defensive player of the year overseas, like I think in the French league, played like in Italy, but he was a guy who was like Jason Tatum's main guy throughout his rehab process. Boston has a lot of fiery assistant coaches, and Tony Dobbins is kind of their calm, cool, collected guy, very soft-spoken. He's 44 years old, connects very well with players. He's the type of guy who I think fits very well with the same vibe that Bryson Graham brings to the table. And I think he's so different from what Billy Donovan brought that it would be very good for, again, a Bulls team that's one of the youngest teams in the league. I believe 24 years old, about their average age right now. And that's before getting rid of guys like Colin Sexton, most likely. So I definitely want them to go young. But Tony Dobbins, honestly, anyone from the Celtics staff, but he's a name I myself have kept an eye on. And I wrote about him a little bit at Roundtable. So definitely a young coach. Tom Thibodeau would be fun. I'm sure Joe Cowley would love that. But we don't need Tibbs back in town, I don't think.
If we're gonna go Jeff Van Gundy, might as well just bring back Phil Jackson, right?
I do bring back Phil Jackson, bring back Jaden Ivey, and let's really have some fun.
Oh my gosh! Wow! Holy cow! We have like some crosses and some incense in the same locker room. It'll be intense.
Trade for Kyrie Irving. Call HBO.
We talk about you get flat earthers. The whole thing. We'll be good to go. What's interesting is I do think that I really love this idea of the slap thing. The being able to articulate. Right? Because he didn't want to get into who he wanted to do for his front office. He didn't want to get into his coaches necessarily, but he did talk about what he wanted his players to look like, and we do have insight into what he wanted his players to look like because he's obviously drafted them and helped to facilitate drafting them at other organizations. This slap thing I thought was really unique, interesting, and it points to it is certainly a pivot from the 6-point guard Chicago Bulls of the last 5 years, right? And so playing 6'5" guys at the 4. What are your thoughts on that? I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was a very nuanced insight, and I think it inform a lot of like what we're gonna see in terms of what how he's gonna draft, what players he's gonna look for in free agency, how he might build out Windy City Bulls, and then how he'll look at free agency.
Yeah, I mean, the first things that came to my mind when he was talking about, the players that he valued, Slap, right? One was the draft. So if the Bulls don't move up and they stay at number 4, there's sort of a lot of guards that are projected to go in that range, more or less. So it's like, okay, well, who would they potentially draft at
right,
9?
Right.
And then the other piece was Josh Giddey. Like, while he was saying all this, I'm like, right. Josh Giddey is none of this. You know what I mean? Like size, sure, right? He's a big point guard, but physicality, no. Not athletic, and not a good defensive-minded player. I know that's not in the SLAP acronym, but he did talk about, focusing on defense quite a bit.
Yeah, two-way.
And it got me thinking, I was like, man, what does that mean for Josh Giddey? Now, we're probably getting ahead of ourselves. I don't think that they're just going to start looking to trade Josh Giddey this summer. One thing I was actually curious about, I want to get your guys' thoughts on, because then I started running scenarios in my mind. I was like, well, what would a trade for Josh Giddey look like? Like, what could he potentially net in a trade? Because I actually have no idea what his trade value would be. And then the other thing that you also kind of have to consider too, right, is like, first round picks are now going to be a lot more valuable. They're probably going to be a lot harder to acquire given the new lottery reform. People are, teams are going to be much more hesitant to move on from their first round picks, knowing that could easily be a number one pick, right? It's just based on the structure. So I'm curious, what do you guys think? Like, if they were to pivot and say, you know what, Josh Giddey does not fit the mold of the type of player that we're looking for, let's try to trade him while his value is still high because he is a very productive player. But I honestly don't know that they would actually be able to get that much for him. What do you guys think?
So it's actually funny you bring that up, Jamal, because it's something I've been thinking about a lot. I did write about over at Bulls Roundtable that I think Bryson Graham obviously has a ton to work with, draft picks, salary cap space, and then I think his third best asset is actually Josh Giddey. Now, it is interesting. I don't think it's his third best asset in terms of everyone wants Josh Giddey. It's so funny how Bulls fans love to overreact, but I mean, it's one of the biggest teams in the world. I get it. I think I said like Josh Giddey is like the third best asset Bryson Graham has to work with. Someone said, God, everyone thinks Josh Giddey's Cade Cunningham. And I'm like, how did we get there? But ignoring that, I think Giddey's a great player. He improved a lot on his main weakness, which was the shooting. We know he's not going to be a great defender. He rebounds his ass off to try to make up for that. I think the hidden value is the fact that he makes that $25 million per year flat. I think teams are going to be looking to obviously always someone's trying to offload a contract. Houston's going to be trying to get rid of Dorian Finney-Smith, who makes a pretty hefty number for a role guy who had a weird year. So I think you'll be able to get a first round pick for Josh Giddey, which first round picks are gold. That's great. Yeah. But I think the catch is when Josh Giddey was a restricted free agent, teams weren't knocking down their door to sign Josh Giddey. So I think they'll give you a first round pick if you're willing to take back a bad contract. They take Josh Giddey. Yes. And I think there's still a ton of value in that. So that $25 million figure is just other teams are going to look at that as, I'll take Josh Giddey's $25 million if you take my problem, throw your first round pick for your troubles, because it's not like Giddey's some bum. So I do think the Bulls can get a first round pick for Giddey, but they're going to have to deal with the fact that they're going to have to eat some pretty terrible money, most likely. But with Bryson Graham in charge, if Michael Reinsdorf really means what he says and he's going to let him sort of control things, I think there's a chance we see the Bulls do things they don't do, which is take back bad contracts to accumulate more draft picks. And a final credit to AK, obviously I don't need to anymore, but the Bulls do have multiple first round picks in this draft, which feels pretty weird and foreign for Bulls fans, but we want to have that more going forward, which AK didn't really do with burning pretty much all of their first round picks as soon as he got here. So acquiring more is where they need to go. And I think you can use Giddey to get a first round pick as long as you're willing to sort of, again, just eat some bad money on the back end.
Yeah, I think that was my favorite part of one of my favorite parts. I mean, the whole presser was really good, but I think that's what you just alluded to. There is us doing things differently now. Like for the first time, we're going into a draft and we got multiple first round picks. After Sunday, we might know if we're in the top 4. We might be number 1, knock on wood. But just the fact that even before anything changes, we're slotted to be at 9 and 15. And when you hear Bryson Graham say that we're looking to be opportunistic and creative, I mean, dude, it's music to my ears, and it makes you wonder, like, will we actually make a move to potentially even get another first round pick, or do we make a move to maybe package number 15 and a player to move up again? So I'm really curious to see what we do there. Absolutely. I mean, it's a very exciting time, man. Like, we talk about not having AK here anymore. I'll never forget watching Terrence Shannon Jr. fall so far in the draft and just seeing like AK do something, man, like move into the draft. Like we could do something. I think he went at 28 near the end of the first round. Like we could have walked out of that draft with TSJ and Modest. It's just, I feel like one of AK's biggest flaws for me was just sitting on his hands too much. So to hear Bryson Graham now saying that, we're going to be on it, opportunistic and creative. So I'm really excited for that.
I will say very randomly, I didn't like Slap. Not that I didn't like it. I love, what he's going for. The one mistake I think he made was doing an acronym, just because as Bulls fans, it's not his fault. He's probably not watching the Bulls every day of his life. It just reminded me, it was too Boylanish, when I think of Slap, when I think of acronyms, it felt like his next step was he was going to pull out like a hard hat and a lunch pail and be like, this is what I'm about. Like, so the Slap was a little bit too on the nose for me, but in all seriousness, I do like that at least he was comfortable defining to us the type of player that he's interested in. But it was funny that the acronym kind of made me think of the regimes of yesteryears. So we'll see if Slap comes back to haunt us, because it will be funny if 2 years from now we just hate every draft pick he's made and we're like, oh yeah, Slap, guys, remember Slap? Because it feels like
to the face,
exactly.
To the face.
Hey, who is it in the Discord, Mike? Shout out to Holito Frito, Lil Savage, and I think he was saying that the Slap acronym reminded him of Eberflus with the hits. So I think I won't get so much caught up in the word. I look at the man who's saying the word.
Yes,
and I think that Bryson Graham,
I like that,
carries himself in just a much different way than any of these guys who come in saying stuff like bulls across the chest and fucking hit the punch out before you leave and push-ups and shit. I think Bryson Graham is a breath of fresh air. He sounds just like one of us, you know, somebody who grew up. And that's why I want to pick Jamal's brain on Dave Lewin, because if we can get him in here too, we're talking about two sickos in this place, man. Like Dave Lewin, literally, I was watching CHGO, and I know you just had Will on your pod, but I was watching Matt Peck just describe Lewin's resume and how he came up. Like his peers said that he took pride in playing Madden and 2K, but playing GM mode. Dude, I mean, like I talked about it last week. I know it sounded silly then, but not to hear that reiterated. There's merit in that. There's merit in somebody who took pride in the rebuilding aspect of the video game. He didn't want to be on the court. He didn't want to make a my player. He wanted to be overseeing the whole team and making all the ins and outs moves and paying attention to the details. So for me, I think it kind of sounds the same as Bryson Graham, you know, who takes pride in being a video scout and working with player personnel. If you get guys like that in the building who take pride in watching the film and the details, dude, I think we're cooking, especially in the draft.
I mean, yeah, Lewin was the guy that I wanted among the 4 finalists. So, you know, like I know everyone wanted Matt Lloyd, or not everyone, but Matt Lloyd was the front runner, right? That's who everyone, you know, thought they were going to hire. But Lewin was the guy I really wanted. And it was primarily one, he's young, but also very analytically driven. You hear great things about him. And then above all, for a great organization, right? The Boston Celtics, like one of the top run franchises in the league, like hands down. Like as much as I hate the Boston Celtics, I've hated them for years. They're a professional organization and they always do well. And so anybody that comes from that team, that's who I wanted. That said, I would love for him to come in as the GM. My only question now is, it's like, does he take that job knowing he didn't get the number 1? You know what I mean? Like he interviewed for this job. We went with someone else, but do you want the number 2? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I guess it all depends on the offer, right? If you throw a bunch of money at them, maybe they won't care. But that was my only thing. But as far as like your question, I would love to have him on. You know, anybody that comes from the Celtics, I think is good. You obviously need someone that is very into the analytics and the trends and what's going on in modern day NBA. So I think it would be a perfect fit if they were able to bring him in.
Yeah, and I think the fact that he was the assistant GM, I think they could still sell that to him.
Sure. Still a promotion.
Like you can definitely sell that. Yeah, like look, man, like we'll get you to be a VP somewhere else. This is your audition. Bro. I think it was actually Peck that said that the CHGO guy said that same thing, man. They said like, listen, you didn't get the VP job, but like maybe we can be your pit stop to put more eyes on you for the next time you go for the job. Because Bryson Graham said it himself. He took pride in the fact that he got the job because he said, this is my first time even trying to get this position, and I got it. He said, this is not a position that you usually get on your first go. So maybe with that being said, maybe that's something that David Lewin understands himself. It's like, it's known that when you try to go for this position, you're not going to get on the first try. And Bryson Graham got lucky. But the fact that Bryson Graham's whole mantra is about being collaborative, and we all kind of just fell in love with just hearing him talk about just working together and building a squad, building a coalition. I think a dude like Bryson Graham, he's somebody that you want to work for. You know, he talked about his philosophy as, I think, 60% people first, 40% the business when he was with Casey and Cameron Smith. Again, that's somebody, he said, like, when you work like that, people want to run through a wall for you. I mean, talking about him right now, I'm ready to run through a wall for Bryson Graham right now. So I can only imagine if I'm David Lewin, if you have another psycho like Bryson Graham coming to you and saying, yo, work with me, let's rebuild this thing, I think he'd be all in for it, like, truthfully.
Well, it's cool because Lewin is 37. So he might, just in terms of age, he might be a handful of years away from that true experience of leading a front office. And so he's a similar age. He comes up in a similar generation in the shadow of Jordan. Obviously, working in Boston, he's seen some excellence, and he understands what excellence looks like. And I think that really matters, so he can insist on sort of the highest standards. And I think the other part of this that's really cool is in the modern NBA, in the modern sports world, and we've seen this in Chicago.
Yeah.
Ryan Poles had who?
Oh.
Ian Cunningham.
Yeah.
Theo Epstein had who? He had Jed Hoyer, right? So we understand that you got to have a good right-hand man. You got to have a person that's probably similar in age, similar in mindset, similar in sort of the way that they see their worldview as it pertains to basketball. Yes. And to me, Lewin would be a great marriage, or a great right-hand man to and in some ways, Lewin's gonna, if they're able to land it, there's a little bit of like, hey, you've got something to prove here too, man. Like
exactly.
You come here and you do well. Like this is gonna position you to go take another job somewhere else. So and I'm gonna give you all of the rope to do that. So yes. I think it's a really, really awesome opportunity. I mean, clearly I think Cunningham's going to do. I think he had a good draft for Atlanta. I think that it's a great opportunity for Lewin, but it doesn't have to be Lewin. I think that there are other guys out there, some other names out there that could be really. We joked a little bit with the Luol Deng stuff with Masai Ujiri. I'm open to anybody that sort of has a young sort of mindset and a young, sort of. I just don't want any more Gar Formans and Jim Boylans. I just like, as long as it's like that, we'll be good.
And the Bulls should be able to attract, you would think, as well, the best GM candidates, because again, a reason I think Lewin, again, we don't know, but I believe he would still be mulling coming to the Bulls for that promotion to GM, is because they're the only team with 2 top 15 picks. So again, you're talking about a team where if you really want to make your mark on a franchise, you want to come in and show, hey, I can hit on 2 draft picks right away and turn a team around in 3 to 4 years. Chicago is the only spot you can really do that right now.
Yeah, and you got $60 million to, and honestly, depending on how Sunday goes, you might have,
franchise player
candidates that you might not have had access to because we landed in the top 4, right? Yeah. I did want to address your comment, Jamal, just to circle back on Giddey. I really. And this probably, maybe we could segue guilty into the players that are on the team or that have been on the team last year.
Okay.
I do wonder, like Orlando, Toronto, there's a handful of teams that I think that people don't like this because they're like, we would have to take the ball out of his hands. But I actually think that Giddey and Halliburton could play together. But I think that there's some places that he could go and you could yield really the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Some teams maybe, they'd be willing to give away. I think 1 first rounder and anywhere in the first round would be acceptable for Giddey, in my opinion. But I think that there are a handful of teams that are contending. I think he could go to Golden State and be helpful. So I think there are some teams that I think could really use him in the short term, and he could be very impactful. I just don't think that he's not a 2 first round guy. There's going to be conditions. I think, Michael, as you alluded to, maybe you're attaching something else, to swap. But I do think that there's value for Giddey on a contending team. And there's a couple of teams that really, really need a facilitator. I mean, Houston needs a facilitator. I don't know that Giddey would be the right place for Houston, but or the right player for Houston. But I just wanted to sort of circle back on that. But the second part of this is, who's on the roster that you think we should keep?
Good question.
Using slap it, if you will.
No one.
Modest is yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I will say, and I think that Bryson Graham was right in saying this. I know that some people are like, oh, why do you say that? It's like, no one is untouchable. Like
Mhm.
Modest is great, right? And I do think that he has a very bright future and should be with the Bulls. But there's no one on this roster where you're like, yeah, man, this is like a Cooper Flag. This is a Victor Wembanyama.
Right.
Nobody's untouchable on this roster.
Right.
So I'll say that first and foremost. Modest, definitely. I think Leonard Miller, you have to, just because it's a team option, it's an easy pickup, it's an easy win, just on a cheap deal. I think it's like $2.4 million. I could see him coming back. I mean, all the other guys that are under contract there is interesting, right? Like
Smith
Trey
and
Jones.
Yep.
I love Trey Jones. I love that he plays his ass off. I love that he's a hustler, hard worker. But I'm curious to, he's not going to fit that slap profile. I know we keep talking about the slap, but he doesn't, right? And it's like, and there's probably some value for Trey Jones, right, around the league as a backup point guard, for a contending team, on a very team friendly contract. And so I think that's one of the first areas you should be looking at if you're looking at maybe trading some players where you can get something for return them. Josh Giddey, I would still like to see Josh Giddey back. Like I say this like, oh, maybe they should look to trade him, but I would still like to see him back at least just for this upcoming year to see how things go. Unless you're able to get some sort of insane haul for him that just you can't pass up on that, right? Say someone is willing to offer 2 first-round picks for Giddey, you kind of have to do it. Let's see who else. You got Trey Jones, Jalen Smith. I'm thinking about
Okoro.
the contract. Yeah, Okoro, Jalen Smith, they're still under contract.
Pat Williams, of course.
Of course. Pat
Williams. The anchor.
Part of me wonders though, like, does it make sense with Bryson Graham now taking over to have this be sort of an evaluation year? And I know that may trigger some people because that's what AK was like, oh, this is going to be an evaluation year, and then he just flipped the roster at the deadline in his first season on the job. So like I hesitate to just say like get rid of everybody and let's start fresh. It's like, well, you go through this draft, you lay that as the foundation, which is what Graham talked about, right? You see what you have in some of these guys and a new coaching staff, maybe new folks in player development on the front office, and see what you have in them, and then reassess, come closer to the deadline and maybe next summer. That's sort of my viewpoint on it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to hear what you guys think though.
I mean, the evaluation year I think is valid, but the tough part about it is, I mean, it's the first thing Bryson Graham has to do, which is when you look at the Bulls roster, I'm really not even sure what I'm looking at exactly in terms of the picture. Obviously you assume like a lot of these guys they acquired at the deadline probably aren't coming back, right? In terms of Colin Sexton and Anthony Simons.
Yeah.
But now with Bryson Graham in here, it's like maybe he likes Anthony Simons. Maybe he thinks he's a guy worth building around, and we don't see that coming. So it's kind of tough until I can sort of see him defining who is the core. But as long as you have Josh Giddey, as long as you have Matas, I think you can sort of look at that as least as your 2 players you're building around. So I think the evaluation year is Giddey and Matas next to, again, these draft picks, because my biggest thing is in terms of curiosity here. Jamal, you alluded to it earlier. Where the Bulls, if they pick around that 9 range and then they have 15, they probably will be taking a point guard prospect and a very, very good one on top of that. So I would like to see what Josh Giddey looks like next to a guy who's controlling the offense more, with him in more of a secondary role. And it's something we didn't get to see a lot of until the second half of the season, where Matas got a lot more on-ball reps. Excuse me.
The other thing too, and I'm like thinking about it further when we think about evaluation period, the Bulls can't be really bad next year. Again, assuming this lottery reform goes through, it hasn't been approved. It could have some tweaks to it, but it was almost like the worst time for the Bulls to kind of go in this direction, down this like really bad rebuild.
Right.
Not that it's going to be really bad, but like, where they can be a really bad team, because now you want to be in the middle. You want to be in that 4 to 10 range, right? Where you're going to get the most lottery balls. So saying that, I'm like, well, it's good for an evaluation year, but they can't be bad like they were post deadline, because you be that bad, you're going to be in that relegation zone. So there probably is a need to make at least somewhat aggressive win now-ish moves where you're actually going to be able to be a little bit better.
Well, the fun part is the fake March basketball that Bulls fans always hate when they get the fake wins. Now that's going to be the money zone. Those fake March wins will suddenly mean a lot, and that is the most hilarious change of fortune there.
It's interesting because what you really they have the opportunity, particularly if they take, like, let's say the Dorian Finney-Smith, like these are not players that can help them win 35 games. But if let's just say you took a Paul George or someone like that, someone well past their prime, that's on a contending team that needs that space back. That maybe helps you win 35 games. And maybe that's okay if you're going to add, 2 first-round picks this year, and then you got 2 second-round picks as well. What's interesting to me is to really think about it from a place of, and I think maybe even are you adding assets throughout this process? If you were to take on a Paul George, do you find a way to get multiple second-round picks or a high first-round pick with it? If you're taking on these bad contracts and you're going to win sort of 35 to 40 games in spite of what you want to do, have you found a way to add assets while you're doing that? I think that's going to be really important for them is to find a way to consistently be moving forward. I rarely saw Gar Forman make moves on the margins. I definitely didn't see AK and Mark Eversley do that. I guess they might think they did with Pat Beverleys and the Tristan Thompsons of the world, but those are not. That's not what I would consider a move on the margins. To me, we're going to learn pretty quickly. And I would be interested to know if you guys agree. I think that we'll know if he's competent within 4 or 5 months, because he has so many things that he has to do, and he has so many resources at his disposal that he can make bad decisions this summer. And I think it would be really telling pretty quickly.
Yeah,
it's tough to say because I think we didn't really know that about AK until, I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on how you look at it, right? Some people hated the Vooch trade. Some people really loved it. They were like, yeah, you need to do this if you're in a big market, like make some big plays, right? And then obviously December 2021, it was like, oh, they revamped the roster and they were decently good, right? So they're maybe this guy has a vision, right? So I don't know. It's tough to say like if we'll know whether or not like if he's competent within the first 4 or 5 months. I don't know. Maybe. I guess it depends because they actually have, substantial draft capital right now. And depending on how he uses those picks, that'll be telling for sure.
That's kind of where I'm going. I mean, obviously with draft picks, that's my area that I care about the most. I've just been talking about these guys nonstop. I think until we see them play, obviously, and with rookies, it can be obviously much further in the season until we really know what we're looking at. But I think my big thing is we'll know if he's doing the right things or if he's going to be a good candidate right away from the initial reaction to the Bulls' first draft pick on draft night. And I mean instant reaction in the moment, online, nationally, fan base, critics. Because when Patrick Williams was picked 4th overall, I will never forget. I myself, I mean, I was I was nobody writing stuff back then. But I remember I had Patrick Williams, I think 21st on my draft board. And I consider myself, man, I thought about this a lot. This kid's good. He's a first rounder. Like in the 15 to 20 range, going to be great for someone. Bulls picked him 4th. And I was like, wow, this is insane to me. I wonder, is everyone else shocked? And there were people who had some feelings that he was going to go high. But generally the reaction was, wow, the Bulls took Patrick Williams 4th overall. And I was like, we'll see how this plays out. But I don't feel great that everyone feels so overwhelmingly shocked by this move. So this is a loaded draft class on paper. So let's just say the Bulls stay at 9. If the Bulls take, I'll just throw out a name, Karim Lopez, the kid who plays in the Australian League. I believe he's from Mexico. If the Bulls take him at 9 overall and everyone's reaction is, oh, wow, 9, that's an interesting spot for him, I'm going to be a little on edge. But if he takes a guy where the reaction is kind of normal, I mean, in this class, even at 9, I think it is very hard to make a pick where people are disappointed. So if he does do that, I will be worried. Because I don't think that it's really hard to mess up this draft, in my opinion. So I think, again, the Bulls have 2 bites at the apple in the top 15. He should be able to hit at least 1 home run, even if the 15th pick, let's just say, ends up being a star and the 9th pick is a total bust. One of these kids should end up being pretty, pretty good. And I think we'll know from the reaction on draft night.
Yeah, that was that's actually something I want to ask you, Jamal. So I got like 3 different scenarios here. So the first one's going to be we'll do some lotto predictions. So if we stay at 9 and we stay at 15, who would you want? And then the second one will be, if we end up moving to the top 4 and we keep number 15, who would you want? And then lastly, we'll do if we end up moving all the way to number 1, who do you take? And then, what do we do with that 15th pick? But yeah, we'll start it for all of us. Like if we stay at 9 and 15, what are a couple different scenarios you're looking at?
I need to do more research on this draft class. I've done some, and I think the guy that I really like in that range is sort of the 15, not 9, but I feel like he's going to go earlier, and I feel like it's a little bit of a reach to take him at 9 is Mara. He might go 9. Some people are saying he's probably going to go earlier. He doesn't really fit the whole archetype of, because he's not very athletic, but he's big, he's long, right? He's very physical. I think that kind of can be your potential starting center for the future. And then I also like, what's his name? Braden Burries. He might go 9. Again, guard, but I think I like that he's, got that two-way potential, very physical, things like that. Number 1 is easy for me. If the Bulls move up to number 1, it's Dabansa. Like you got to take Dabansa. I don't think that there's any question around that. And then if they do, if they're somewhere in I think the top 4 picks are all but more or less clear. You got Dabansa, you got Peterson, Boozer, and Wilson. So whatever the Bulls get, whoever's available on the board that's still among those 3 or 4, I would just say you take them.
Absolutely.
How do you rank those 4?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And obviously I'm not the best person to ask when it comes to this, but my personal opinion, I'm not a big Peterson guy. One, because he's a guard and the Bulls already have a lot of guards, but also just questions around his work ethic and then some of the injury concerns around there as well. I would still take him for, I wouldn't let him, if you have the 4th pick and he hasn't been selected, you take him. But he would be 4th on my board. I would probably go Dabansa, Boozer, and then Wilson, and then Peterson.
Boozer. Yeah.
Dabansa, you said Dabansa, Boozer, Wilson, then Peterson. I like that.
Yeah.
Why do you like Boozer more than Wilson? I'm curious.
I think it's more the upside. Like I like the versatility that he has. He's got to improve his shot. Like that's a big piece. But I think he's a very high IQ player. Not to say that Wilson isn't, but I see more upside with Boozer than Wilson. I still think Wilson's going to be great too. Like I said, I could be completely wrong on that. But that's, if I had to do an order of those top 4, that's what it would be.
Absolutely. How do you feel about Lindenborg?
So I like him. I like him a lot, and I actually think he kind of fits the archetype of what
for sure
saying he wants. But he's 24 years old. You know what I mean? Which is, maybe it's not a bad thing, right? Like the Bulls took Taj Gibson, but that was a late first rounder. That wasn't an early pick. They took Taj Gibson. He was 23, 24 at the time, right? And it's probably why he fell so late into the draft. He ended up being an amazing player for the Bulls. That's my only hesitancy is it's if we're really going down this path of rebuilding and we're trying to get the timeline even a little bit younger, does it make sense to draft a 24-year-old? I don't know. Right. I think he's a great player.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that they have so many interesting options. I'm really curious about the guard that they can get. I do think that it feels like to me, and Michael's been on board with if they get 2 point guards, great. But I'm very curious to see them sort of do a wing and a big man. Yeah. I don't think that I would like to see Modest play the 3, not the 4.
Yes.
And so it's really interesting to me if you could get Amara or a Lindenborg. I wouldn't even be opposed if they did a 4 and a 5. I'm. How do you feel about Swaim and Carr? Have you? I know you said you hadn't looked at them, but are there any wings? I know you said Burries you liked, but have you looked at any other wings that you think could be impactful to the team?
There's definitely. I'm sure there's some exist. I'm let me pull up the mock board right now. Why not? Right.
Yeah,
I'm a huge Carr fan. I just love his length and
from what I saw, I liked Carr, and that's the thing. You need wings in this league, right? And so I think that should be a focus. Again, it kind of goes back to the Bulls are in a really good spot because they have these 2 options, right? So they can get a big in 1 pick and get a wing in another pick, or if they have to get a guard, great.
Right.
Let's see what we can do with him. Pick best player available, and then see what happens from there. See.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I really like Mara one of the things I like about Mara, and I look at these sort of international programs that these guys come from, And Mara, you know, he's from the sort of the Spanish, program, and you've got the Casal brothers there, and something about Mara makes me feel like he can develop some skills to be. I don't know if you guys remember El Gausis. I think
Jadrunas.
Oh yeah.
They played for Cleveland.
Cavs for a long time.
You know, he can be sort of like a big, maybe a Gobert like center. But he's got some skill. He's got some passing. You know, he understands how to use his size. I do think that if you want to compete against OKC and the Spurs, you have to have bigs. You have to have legitimate bigs, not 6'9" centers, but legitimate bigs. And so Mara also puts us in a position where I feel like we maybe can compete down the road, right, 3 or 4 or 5 years from now. I really like Steinbach and Visar. I don't know if they would go as high as 15, but I like both of those players in terms of size.
Nate Ament is a good guy too. Like as far as like a wing goes, right? Like someone that's, you know, like athletic, durable, plays, you know, pretty impactful defense as well. I think that would be a good option too.
Yeah, Nate Ament is very interesting to me.
It's interesting you guys talk about the wings, because like I personally, I haven't went deep into the first round. I think like I'm pretty much done because I really only care about the Bulls and who they're going to draft. But I think I went about like 20-something guys deep. And I don't really love the wings in this class. But again, when you look at the guards, you're kind of stacked on guards throughout. Whereas I think wings, you just have those top guys are so elite in terms of Peterson and DeBansta. Then Cameron Carr out of Baylor, I like a lot. I do like Karim Lopez, even though I kind of took a mini shot at him earlier. But there's a lot of guys with length that are interesting. But this guard class is so stacked. I'm only half joking when I say the Bulls should consider going guard, because when you look at how this board falls, you could come out of this draft with 2 players that I really think have superstar potential. One of the biggest things I look at is just like usage rate for guys. You know, how often are they really making things happen for their team, good or bad? And Mikel Brown, the guy out of Louisville, who I've really talked about a lot, he's a guy who could be in the 9 range where he falls. And he was a guy who had a usage rate of 31%. So again, that's a guy who was pretty much in a superstar role for his team, but he's not in that tier with that top 4. The same reason I like Keaton Wagler out of Illinois. So I think there's some of these guys that the Bulls can get maybe in that 9 range that might fall a little lower than some expect, where again, whether or not they work with Josh Giddey, that's where it comes down to a tough job for Bryson Graham to decide when to move off of some pieces on this roster, how long to let things play out. But I don't think they should be scared about going guard if you have to, because I like Mara a lot. I think he's definitely a first-round pick because he has some passing chops for a guy who's that huge, so it's intriguing. But because we don't see anything in the way of a jumper, I do worry there's a world where he's just a very good backup big. And if you take that in the top 15, it can get tricky. My main thing with him was he was a terrible free throw shooter this year. Don't believe he was living at the line, but I think he was at like 56%. And it's something where you guys mentioned the Boozer Caleb Wilson thing. I went back and forth on that forever. I have Boozer 3, Wilson 4. And I love everything almost about Wilson's game more, his tenacity, his defense. But the thing I can't get over is Boozer does pretty much everything at a decently high level, including shooting. He shot pretty well from 3 on limited attempts, and he shot 78% from the free throw line, whereas I think Caleb Wilson was about 70% from the free throw line. And that's a pretty good indicator of how your jump shot is going to play out. So I think we see a world where Cam Boozer is going to stretch the floor. And if Wilson never becomes a jump shooter, you're really relying on that athleticism for him to be a dominant scorer like he was at the college level. So I really focus on that free throw percentage. And again, it's why a guy like Mara, it scares me when you take him at 9. At 15, I think I could live with it because, again, that's your extra pick anyway. You got more wiggle room with it. But at 9, I would be a little scared.
Yeah, I think he's too high to go 9, but he's probably not going to be available by 15. You know what I mean? I wouldn't take him 9. If he's still available 15, great. That's
I think at 15 you would kind of have to take him at 15.
You'd have an interesting scenario if you dangle some players out there, because maybe that's a world where Josh Giddey and something. Josh Giddey in 15 gets you up from 15 to 10, and then if you're taking your franchise point guard at 9 anyway, maybe you solve some problems. So they got a chance to get real creative on draft night. Sorry, Joe, I stepped on you there.
No. I think it's interesting that if you could move 15 and Giddey for
Yes.
Golden State's pick, or depending on you move. I was trying to look at the teams in the top 20 that want to win 50 games, and the only team I could think of where it felt like it might make a little sense is Golden State. I don't know that saying that out loud, I don't know that works, but
or you could say the Thunder.
Oh God,
not that they would ever take Giddey back, but yeah.
Well, Atlanta took the motherload offer in the first place to get that Pelicans pick, right?
Yeah,
Depending
true.
on where that goes, let's say we do part 2. Obviously, it'd be a little bit of a risk gamble for Bryson Graham, but if you throw out multiple future Bulls first-round picks, I think any team is going to pick up the phone at this point.
that's actually what I was gonna ask you, Jamal. I was gonna say, like, I know I get a little, I'm gung ho right now, man. Like Bryson Graham has me ready to run through a goddamn wall still. But I was gonna ask, like, do you think that, like, his comments meant that we might try to get more draft capital in this draft, or do you think? Because I posed this question in the Discord earlier. Discord took a shit today, so I didn't see a lot of responses. But I think it was shout out to our guy Jeff Littman. But I said, oh, maybe with Bryson saying he wants to get more creative and opportunistic, we'll get more draft capital in his draft. He said he thinks that maybe it's not about this draft, but using whatever assets we have to acquire players or future assets down the line. Because Bryson Graham also did allude to that too. He said that it is going to take some time, and this draft will be the first iteration of this new era. So he's going to be patient. So it's hard to read if we're going to try to move up and maybe use that guy like Trey Jones because he doesn't fit SLAP, and use a guy like Trey Jones or Jalen Smith, package that with a pick to maybe move into the late end of the first round, or maybe we use that for a player in free agency, or what do you think?
Or package, all the second round picks that they have, right?
How many we got? Like 8 of those things right now, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be valuable for something, right? Yeah, it's tough to say. I think the Bulls have opportunities to potentially not only just move up in this draft, but acquire an additional pick, right? Like you said, using Trey Jones as an example to try to get maybe in the late first round, package, additional second round picks. They also already have 2 second round picks in this draft too, right? So
that's a good point. I forgot about that.
Try to move up. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's one of those things where you get an idea of what Bryson Graham wants, but we're never really going to truly know until we actually start seeing some of his transactions to say, okay, this is what he's about. But I think there's a lot of opportunities, and I've said this before, I think there's multiple opportunities to take on some undesirable contracts to take in additional draft capital, future first round picks from teams. I look at a guy like Jakob Poeltl, right? Like the Raptors would love to get out of his contract.
Right.
How much, how desperate are they to get off of his contract? What's even worth it, right? How much do the Bulls need to get back in return to get off of, to take in a contract like that? Going back to the Josh Giddey piece as well, it's like, would a Giddey Suggs trade make sense? Not that I'm
we talked about that in Discord
because he struggled a lot, but does that make sense? Because the Magic really, really need a facilitator.
They do, man.
Would they be willing to throw in something else? Because in my opinion, right now anyway, Giddey has shown to be more reliable as a productive player than someone like Suggs, even though Suggs is exponentially better defensively. So I look at stuff like that. There's just I kind of keep going back. It's like there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of things that Graham can do, like you said, to get creative as well to try to really.
Yes, sir. I don't know who. My bad, Joe. It's just comment I wanted to address because you said, why would you want Jakob Poeltl? No, man, it's not about wanting him. He can sit his ass on the bench. Right. It's about, are we going to get some draft capital attached to it? And I'm not mad at the end of the day, I'm not mad at a dude like Jakob Poeltl if being our next Nick Richards. Now, granted, the contract is what it is, but if it gets us some, if it gets us some draft capital, though, I'm fine with keeping them there, man. I dealt with Nikola Vucevic being my center for 6 years. I think I'm okay with dealing with some Poeltl if it gets us some capital. Just to address that comment.
At least Poeltl, can protect the rim a little bit, not something.
Exactly.
Well, and like you look at you get a let's say you do get Mara at 15, right? And then
yes, sir.
You trade for Poeltl, and I don't know what they would trade. Let's just say they trade Patrick Williams or for Poeltl, and they get whatever it is that helps facilitate Toronto getting some cap space. So we get Pirtle and a first round pick for to help Toronto get $10 million in cap space.
I'm all for it.
Right. So remember, OKC went and got Kemba Walker and Al Horford, and they didn't play them. They did not play those two players. They played Josh Giddey and SGA. They barely played SGA, and they lost. Right. So it's totally. I think as long as we're as fans, as long as we're sort of processing these moves with the understanding that, hey, this gives you access to more draft capital, right? So as long as a move is being made that advances your long-term goals, then it's a good move.
I think Bryson Graham kind of alluded to that in his presser. He just seems to be playing chess out here, man. Like he said, like even if every move comes with layers. Like I may make this move and you may not understand it now, but it's setting up something for the future. Again, that's already just so refreshing to hear, as opposed to AK, where it seemed like he's tripling down on moves or he's not wanting to move off something because he made the wrong choice. It's like this dude Bryson Graham is already talking about thinking ahead, where you may not understand a piece of the puzzle, but it's all in connection and a part of something bigger. So I'm just excited for that, man. Truly, truly, truly.
Jamal, what are your thoughts on Modest's potential, his ceiling?
It's a good question. I mean, it's tough to say because I go back and forth a lot because then there are times where I'm like, man, Modest is amazing, incredible. And then there's some games where I'm just like, is he going to be like a superstar? You know what I mean? And I don't know if that's, has to do with coaching, the team dynamics, right? The fact that, they're not in a position to be competing. And I don't know if that's wearing on him a little bit. I think, if Modest just continues to work on his strength, his overall physicality, that's sort of his biggest weakness, right? He's just not a very physical guy at this point in time.
Right.
But outside of that, he has all the tools, right? He has the tools to be a really great player. I think he can be a future star, all-star. I don't know about superstar. Like I don't know if I see all NBA caliber, in front of him. But maybe making a couple all-star games, and that's still really good.
That's okay. Yeah, people get upset when you say that. Like we don't need every player to be a superstar, man. Like him being a really solid number 3 is. I just think of Luol Deng. I mean, even though he became an all-star, but like to me, he was never a superstar. But that's the guy that you can put the ball in his hands and he gets it done. You need a team full of good players. When you say somebody's not going to be a superstar, Bulls fans get upset. Like, oh, you don't think Modest has a higher ceiling? Dude, it's okay to have a really good number 3 that shines at being your number 3. And I think that can be Modest for sure.
And if he does great, like if he breaks out and becomes like a top 5 player in the league, I don't think it's going to happen. But if he does,
even better.
Amazing. I'm happy to come on here and eat my words. Like, yeah, I didn't think the guy was going to be a superstar, but he is, and I'm happy.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, and I think that the way that, from my perspective, like a healthy perspective around Modest and Josh, is that they're starters in the NBA right now, and we can pretty much be certain that they're legitimate starters. They are not, in my opinion, first option guys, at least right now. Neither of them show themselves to be first or second option guys.
Yeah.
And I think that the challenge, and Will maybe even alluded to this when he was talking with you, Jamal, is can Josh be the third best player on the team if he needs the ball in his hands as often as he does? I sort of think he can. I think that there's been too much made of this sort of heliocentric style of game. Yes. I think that there's plenty of styles of play that allow for multiple point guards or multiple guys, that you don't need to have this one guy who does everything and he has to score 30 and he has to get 10 rebounds and 10 assists. I don't believe that that's the only way to win. And so I think that there's, which to me makes me believe that Josh has options on the market.
Yeah, good point. I mean, from what I'll say too, just to allude to that as well, it just makes me wonder. I know I keep harping on it, but like I love to hear that Bryson say like he may bring in a coach where we might want to kill him for it. So again, like you're talking about Giddey just having options out there, just we don't know what this team's about to look like this offseason. And like that's just the most exciting part about it all. And even hearing him say, you know, that when they asked him on I think it's By the Horns where Casey and Cameron is called, but they asked him who was your favorite player outside of Michael Jordan, and he said Allen Iverson.
Yeah.
Which that kind of surprised me. I mean, so like that also shows you, because I made a tweet about it. I just said, like, does that mean that he may be looking at like Darius Acuff potentially here? And people say, oh, well, he doesn't fit Slap. Yeah, but again, he also talked about like I think he alluded to the baby Bulls, and even the Michael Jordan team said they were really built well cohesively. So while one of your players may not be Slap, and if you're looking at a Darius Acuff, but you fill out the rest of your roster with a slap squad, you're cooking. So again, you know, we talk about Giddey. You just wonder, like, would he come here and move off of Giddey and bring in a guy like Darius Acuff? And because it sounds like he's not afraid to come in and make a move like that, man, where he says we might want to kill him for it, but then we'll praise him later. But it's just exciting because I think, to your point, Pepper, is that whether we keep Josh Giddey here, I think you can still take a dude like Acuff because Giddey can shine in an off-ball role. We've talked about how that might be what optimizes him the best, is having him play the point forward, because he's too, you know, it might just do better for him to be like a point forward. Put him on the wing, let him initiate the offense off the wing, you know. Or if we end up trading him, like you said, Pep, I think he has a lot of value. You put him on a team like Orlando, you put him on Toronto. There's multiple places that Giddey can go and he can even be heliocentric there.
Right.
But
yeah, well, it's interesting because you ultimately I know that the modern NBA is sort of like this unscripted, give the ball to the best player on the team and you know, do whatever you can. But I think back to your earlier point, Jamal, the canvas is completely white, in my opinion. I think that they have, you know, the you know, as they say in corporate America, it's a blue sky or a green field. Like there's nothing there, right? And so they don't have to look at, you know, think about it. The Bulls had Reggie Theus, and there was another point guard that they had. They had a couple of young players when they drafted Jordan, Orlando Woolridge.
Oh wow!
Those guys didn't make it to the Pistons rivalry games. They didn't make it. And so, you know, and it's okay. I mean, we had Elton Brand, and I sort of wish we would have kept him, but you know, we started off our rebuild post Jordan with Elton Brand and Ron Artest, and those guys ended up winning and playing on other teams. So I think it's perfectly okay for us to start with Modest and Josh, and then end up somewhere else in 3 or 4 or 5 years.
And it's why I'm so excited about draft night. I mean, Bryson Graham, something he said, and again, it goes back to him being, obviously it's not a high bar to clear, but much better communicator than AK or Mark Eversley in terms of he said, you know, the Bulls don't have a star yet. He knows that. We don't have a star. We're looking for that star player to build around. But then he also said, I'm not saying that someone who isn't on this roster can't develop into that. But I think your first statement is always your truth serum, your initial statement. And he knows the Bulls don't have that guy who they're going to build around. Giddey has tons of advantages, but he's a decent catch and shoot guy. He isn't a knockdown shooter by any means. He's decent with the ball in his hands, but he isn't some amazing, really great wiggle, going to beat a guy off the dribble type player. Matas is a pretty good scorer, not a very good playmaker quietly, not a guy who is honestly processing the game super quickly all the time in terms of his next move. Just has length and athleticism. So I think they're very well suited to being number 2 and number 3 options. So I think the Bulls kind of weirdly have it backwards, where they have those parts figured out. Now, if they can get that guy to be heliocentric, which is why I think AJ DeBanster or Peterson would kind of be perfect for the scenario they're in right now. But I think Graham, the fact that he's willing to acknowledge that they don't have that, tells you he's looking for it. And taking a guy like Acuff, if he was to slip for some reason all the way to 9, again, not to, you know, Patrick Williams is who he is, but it would be the anti-Patrick Williams in terms of, I think I trust Graham to get a talent that slips rather than reaching on someone that he really likes to prove a point.
Absolutely.
Jamal, what do you think about Noah Esingeh? Where do you stand with that? I mean, he's sort of
I mean, it's tough to say. He barely played last year, right? I mean, when we did see him, and even in summer league, you could tell he's a project, right? He's very raw. There's a lot of development that needs to be had there. At the same time, at least with what you've seen and the tools that he has, there is more upside than I think a lot of the other players on the roster, right? And so I'm intrigued by that, but I don't really have a good baseline for really to say, oh, this guy can really be something, because he played 2-3 games last year and only a handful of minutes. And then summer league, he started out kind of and then got better as the games went on. So I don't know. I feel like you definitely have to take a look at him. Don't try to trade him, right? He's only 19 years old, not even 19 years old. But I'm a bit skeptical, and only because we just haven't really got to see him play much.
Yeah. What are some things that you would definitely not like to see? So like some worst case scenarios that, like, as fans, we look at this and we were like, and I Michael, you alluded to some of this a little bit, but like, man, like I really hope they don't do that. Let's just say it's like a Giannis Antetokounmpo or a like an Embiid trade or something crazy like that.
Yeah, I mean, what I don't want them to do is do like a Vucevic type trade. In other words,
right. Absolutely.
Like you said, Giannis.
For Sabonis?
Yes.
Shout out Barton.
Exactly. Like you said, Giannis, but it's still Giannis. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think they should go that route. But like, I could be sold on it because it's still freaking Giannis, right? I mean, depending on how much they would have to give up to get him. But don't go after like a fringe type all-star that puts up big numbers, but also has a lot of weaknesses, where you trade future draft capital when you're in a rebuild. Right. So that is what I really hope that they don't do. And I don't think that they would. I think Bryson Graham, first of all, knows that they're in a rebuild. AK was never able to admit that they were actually
that was huge.
And I think
no denial.
Exactly. And he knows that this is going to take time, whereas AK just tried to flip it. I think he really just wanted to show like, hey, I'm the big guy in town, and I know how to flip this thing around, and we're going to bring a title contender right away. So I don't expect that they would do anything like that. So as far as like a question, that is what I hope would not happen. And then I also just hope that, they're not just going to try to trade for like, second draft guys. Again, it's all the AK specials. That's just what I hope. Oh, Grady Dick is, wanting to, get out of Toronto. Let's go after him. Like, what is that? Like that. How does that really benefit you? It's stuff like that I would not want to see.
I mean, if you move if these second round picks, if you're doing that with your low value picks, okay. But if you're using premium picks to do that, like if you're moving the 56th pick for Grady Dick.
Oh yeah, sure. Whatever. Yeah.
Right. But like if you're moving the 38th pick, that would piss me off, because I think a top 40 pick in this draft, can yield you talent.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was really intrigued by Oklahoma City's draft. They are consistently good 20 to 50. They are consistently good in these in the margins. Yeah, and I really, so like him being bad there is something I definitely do not want to see. I definitely want to see us be better constructing a team that has a long tail. And I like the term that he used, the term layers. I don't know how intentional that was, but like the idea of layering this thing the right way is what Detroit has done. It's what Charlotte's done. It's what OKC has done. It's what the Spurs have done. And it takes you 3 years of suffering, but it's worth it. How do you think that the Bulls fans are going to treat Graham as we walk through the mud? As he said, getting it out of the mud means we will suffer in the mud for 2 or 3 seasons. How do you think that the Bulls fans will react to 20-win seasons for 3 years in a row?
I mean, there's always going to be the Bulls fans that are going to be mad about everything.
You're right. We know that.
So there's always going to be that. I do think that even for some of the ones that don't necessarily complain, they're going to want to see some semblance of winning or progress at you said 2 to 3 years. Like it's like, yeah, by season 3, let's hope we're not winning 20 games. Right. Especially then going back to the new draft lottery reform, you don't want to be in that area. But I think that there's always going to be fans that are going to be annoyed. Why aren't we winning now? Right? Like they're always anxious. They want to be right at the forefront, getting into the championship contention. But I think some fans will be patient. I myself am going to be patient because
I'm patient. Yeah.
you have to, right? Based on where we're at right now, you're going to have to be patient.
I've always said, man, like I've never believed in the championship or bust. I guess I can say that because we talked about it before we went live. I never got to see the championship years. I didn't get here until D Rose was here. But for me, like that's why I'm so good with the patient approach, because I remember D Rose's first year when we took the Celtics by surprise. We were building something. But nobody saw it. Nobody saw it coming. Even our second year, because I remember I was pissed off because I'm like, why are we never on ESPN? You know, you're a kid, you want to see your team on ESPN. Your team on ESPN, and I never did. And then that third season, after we woke the league up, is when we started getting, D Rose's MVP year, but we were on TV all the time. But that right there showed me winning is what counts. And sometimes that takes time, but your team could still be good. Because I remember watching every game, and I'm like, why doesn't the rest of the NBA, like my friends who were friends of, that's when LeBron was on the Cavs back then, and we'd be at lunch, and they'd be talking about, how they were watching the Cavs. And I'm like, y'all wasn't watching the Bulls last night? And they'd be like, man, we don't care about the Bulls. But I knew how good we were. I'm watching D Rose pass the ball to Nocioni and goddamn, Brad Millers and shit. And John Salmons, and it's just like that showed me right there, and it shows you right there, man. Like sometimes your team could still be really fun to watch while you build that process out. And I'm okay if we're not winning the game, but we still have a good team that's going out there and we're building it organically. I mean, look at the Spurs, man. They've built it organically. It's good ethical hoops. I'm okay with us not being one of the best teams in the league for 3 to 4 years, 5 years, whatever, but just give me a good product that I'm proud of. And I think that Bryson Graham, 100% of the same mold. He's going to give us a team that we can be proud of. I mean, even what he's looking for, slap, size, athleticism, length, and physicality. I need it, Jamal. I need it, man. Like I'm about to slap the goddamn wall right now. Like I'm ready for it.
We're all ready for it, man.
Yeah, man.
Where are you guys at?
I'm excited.
What do you guys think of I sort of believe that the two players that they pick in the draft should be starters. They should start this coming up season.
Oh shit.
And, I would, for instance, I would really dislike JQ. Like I like him as a talent. I just I don't want any more, players that just can't stay healthy. And so, how do you all feel about the two picks being starters? Do you feel like that they need to upside picks, or you think that they need to be, high floor guys?
Good question.
I mean, it's tough to say. I think you go with what is going to make sense for the long term, not necessarily always, right? You go for what the long term play is in the short term. And if that means that they're starter quality type players, great. If not, and you need to bring them in slowly, they're more project type guys, I'm also okay with that too.
Right. Do you all see any players in particular that seem more like I was looking at Amit and some of his workouts, and it sort of reminded me it's like he feels a little Buzelis-y. Like he feels a little like Buzelis did when he was a prospect.
They're similar, similar builds, for sure.
I mean, you got Miller, Inasenge, and Buzelis, so I feel like I wouldn't hate it if they got Wilson, but I just wonder if there's certain guys that just feel like off or feel a little redundant in the build.
I think I wouldn't worry about redundancy as much, just because when you're starting so much from scratch, you're just looking for that potential. I do worry about immense, kind of like you said, some of the Matas, the shooting and everything translating. But because he has the size and physicality, I maybe wouldn't mind him with that 15 range. And it's like I said, it's going to be very hard for the Bulls, I think, to mess up on draft day.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, guys, we Peppers, Mike, and I are going to stay on for a little bit, but Jamal's got to get out of here. So just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on today, Jamal, man. Any closing thoughts from you going into Sunday?
No, I appreciate it, man. My only closing thoughts going into Sunday is I'm really annoyed that the NBA decided to schedule the draft lottery on Mother's Day.
Right.
My wife, the reason my wife's texting me, she's like, "Are you gonna come help out the kid? The kids with bedtime?" It's like, all right, I'm coming. And then now I got to explain to her so there's this thing called the draft lottery. It's really important because if the Bulls get lucky, this could be franchise changing. It's not going to be anything there. She's like, it's Mother's Day. We're doing stuff as a family. So that's my only closing thoughts. but my fingers will be crossed. I'll still be watching.
Absolutely.
I hope the Bulls get the #1 pick.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, thank you so much for coming on today, Jamal. And like I said, just in case, by the rare chance that you're watching this and you somehow don't know who that dude is, man, just type in Bull Central on YouTube, on Twitter, type in Bull Central, and enjoy. But yeah, thank you so much, Jamal.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it, man.
Jamal.
Appreciate you guys for having me. You guys take care, all right?
All right, brother. Let me see. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, but no, that was dope. That was dope with Jamal. But yeah, I mean, any closing thoughts from you guys, Pep, Mike?
No, man, just excited for Bryson Graham. I think, like I said, similar vibes to AK in terms of whenever there's a new hire for the Bulls regime after we didn't like the previous one, everyone's kind of excited. We only got great things to say until the moves actually happen. My catchphrase, it's all fun until the Bulls do something. So we're getting close to time for the Bulls to do something, man. So Bryson Graham, I like everything he said. Now we'll see if I like everything he does. So I'm optimistic, cautiously so right now.
Absolutely. No, sir, man.
And I think for me, the big thing is like I'm looking at the playoffs right now, particularly the semifinal in the conference. And like, you know, Detroit, it has a certain style of play that we're going to have to contend with for a long time, right? And Indiana's going to come back, right? So, like, what kind of team do you want to be in 2 or 3 years when you want to contend against Detroit, Indiana? What kind of team do you want to be if you want to contend against? I still think Philly has some potential because of Edgecombe and Maxey, and the Knicks, right? So, and then you've got I don't love any of the teams down south, but I just think that when you look at the teams that are in the playoffs right now, as a fan, that should be pretty informative in terms of like how we should be looking to build. And I think AK and Billy I don't know what they were building. They weren't building towards this. So you know, I'm very interested to see how we start to build out and make some decisions over the next 3 months. And I think obviously Sunday is going to be super informative in telling us where we're going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, gentlemen. Well, I mean, this was great. Like I said, shout out to Jamal for coming through. I saw one of the comments. It was like, let me see if I can find it really quick because shout out to them. Oh yeah, Brick Ripsaw. I don't know who that is, but shout out to them. But they said all this talk don't mean nothing, you know, until we know what happens on Sunday. And I kind of feel that, but I feel like it definitely did mean something, man, you know, because I'm just excited. I wouldn't be this excited going into Sunday if it wasn't for having Bryson Graham here. Like if this was still AK picking, I mean, if you guys been watching our podcast, and we've all been, I know I've been worried. It's like saying AK's name felt like bad juju. I mean, Mike's phrase here, you know, it's all fun and games. We all be out here cheesing and laughing until we start talking about, oh shit, well, what we finna do? You know, it's all fun and games until the Bulls do something. But that's not the case anymore. Like we don't have our terrorists anymore. The terrorist is gone. I can say that too now. Goodbye, you know? So I'm just really excited going into Sunday, man. Like for the first time, I don't know, you know, without even knowing where he pick, I just don't know what kind of players that he wants to get. I mean, historically, he always gets guys that I like. Trey Murphy, you know, you talked about it, Joe Pepper. Nikhil Alexander Walker. So even if we stay at 9 and 15, I'm still excited because I still think that he'll find some good picks there, or maybe even package something to move up and just get creative, like he himself said. It's no longer us as fans who want to get creative. It's the goddamn VP who's talking about, man, I almost from my goddamn Concord 11s here today. That's who we got in the building now. Like, I really need to let that sit in. Like, we got us one in the building, man. So
I love that.
I'm excited for Sunday, man. So yeah, you know, thank you guys so much. Shout out to our guy Ange. You know, he's saying as long as we keep building an exciting product, absolutely. You know, absolutely. Shout out to Monk for coming through. Shout out to Zod, Sean Thompson. Thank you so much for coming through, brother. But thank all of you guys for coming through. We'll be back on Tuesday. Pep, you think you can make it on Tuesday at 7? We got Drew Stevens coming in.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Good. Yeah, we need that.
Funny story. Like I wrote a couple articles on Bloggable. I'm like, Drew, will you look at this? And
that's cool.
Now look at Drew.
Yeah, exactly.
Out there in the media. Back in
exactly.
This is probably 10 years. I don't know. It's been a while. So
Okay.
it's good to see Drew. So yeah, I would love to be on for sure.
Catch up with him, absolutely.
Yeah.
I know Mike said he's always running to him at the games. The dogs are barking for Drew too. Yeah, but I can't.
They got so excited when you brought up Drew. But yeah, I chop it up with Drew sometimes at the UC whenever I'm covering games for Roundtable. But yeah, man, I promised my mom a top 4 pick for Mother's Day. So if we don't get it, Adam Silver, somebody's got to answer to her. It's not going to be me. Somebody's got to talk to my mom. So.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, yeah, man. Thank you guys for, coming through the show. And as always, to my 2 pod mates, man, thank you guys for doing this with me. But we'll see you guys on Tuesday. And I mean, let's get ready for Sunday, everybody.
All right, y'all.
Bless. Much love, man.
Take it easy.